My first month on the job, the board hired a law firm to sue me. The Democratic Party in LA, it's a machine. Well, I told them I was not going to enforce vaccinations. Man, they lost their mind. And they were trying to dictate how things were happening as if they were speaking for me. I said, no, wait a minute. That's not what I want. You're not going to speak for me. And all of a sudden, that was like, oh my God, the brakes are on. Hey, wait a minute, this guy's not going with the program.
But you yourself consider it as a Democrat as well?
Yeah, but I wasn't the right Democrat because I didn't kiss the ring of the board. So I had to be removed at all costs. If you dare put your name in the hat on a recall against a Democratic incumbent, we will destroy you politically. Oh, there's gangs on the Sheriff's Department. And I'm saying, where's the evidence? Oh, there's gangs on... Where's the evidence? They could never answer the question because they didn't have evidence. Yes, and they used the subpoenas. Everything was theater, designed to deceive a public that was unfortunately gullible enough to buy into the lie. And they never could produce any evidence. I say, hey, show me who they are. I'll be more than happy to terminate them. Chief of police took a knee in front of the protesters. And I'm like, oh, hell no.
It's anarchy.
I'm not taking a knee for anyone except for the man upstairs.
Amen. Let me give you a proper introduction, Sheriff. Sheriff Alex Villanueva, or Villanueva, how do you Villanueva, is a Chicago-born law enforcement who served as the 33rd sheriff in the biggest county in the entire nation, County of Los Angeles. Mr. Villanueva defeated incumbent Sheriff Jim McDonnell in 2018 and became the first candidate who unseated the incumbent sheriff in over 100 years. Alex served in the United States military for 10 years, including United States Air Force. Thank you for your service. He started his police career in 1986 by becoming a deputy sheriff. Then he climbed the career ladder and became a sergeant, lieutenant, and the first Democratic sheriff in almost 140 years. Sheriff lost his re-election in 2022 to Robert Luna. That re-election race was focused on allegedly deputy gangs, allegations on internal harassment, and retaliation against whistleblowers. Mr. Villanueva is a husband, a father, and a man of God. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
Sheriff, so obviously I'm a foreigner and I'm an immigrant, and the whole system of the United States, especially the government itself, is very complicated for me. So I would like to start with the terminology. Mm-hmm. So what is the highest ranking of law enforcement in the United States?
Well, you have federal law enforcement, you have state level, you have county level, you have city level, and then tribal.
Tribal even?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have all these different layers. At the federal level, it's all appointed authority, like the director of the FBI, for example, or the Attorney General of the United States. These are all appointed positions.
And appointed by the president?
By the president. At the federal level, appointed by the president. At the state level, you'll have an Attorney General. You might have a state military police, like in California, it's a Highway Patrol. In Texas, it's the Texas Department of Public Safety, for example. The nomenclature varies by state, but those are all the head of the law enforcement is going to be appointed by the governor, typically. The attorney generals are voted in by the public. And then when you go to the county level, the sheriffs are elected by the people. But the sheriff is actually the highest position that's elected directly by the people in the nation, the rank of sheriff, because they're true law enforcement, where the attorney generals of the district attorneys, they like to call themselves the top cops, but in reality, they're prosecution. They're not the law enforcement component.
What's the difference between, for instance, Los Angeles Police Department and Sheriff Department?
The Los Angeles Police Department is led by a chief of police that's appointed by the mayor, and they they provide law enforcement services to the city of LA exclusively.
Okay.
The county sheriff, the sheriff's department, provides law enforcement to all the unincorporated areas of the county, to 42 contract cities, and that's roughly 3/4 of all the land area of LA County is patrolled by the sheriff's department. And that's probably the main difference. But then the sheriff also has to run the county jails. They provide security and bailiffs to the superior court system, and they do a search and rescue and a lot of different things that police departments typically don't do.
So jail and prisons, do you have
difference?
What are the differences?
Prisons are state run, and prisons house convicted felons. They're now violent felons, like murderers, rapists. They're in state prison. In the county jails, they're misdemeanors. They're people awaiting trial. They could be in jail for murder, but they have to go through a trial. And during the time they're on trial, they stay in the county jail until they get convicted. And then you have, after AB 109, which is prison realignment, they kicked a lot of the nonviolent felonies to the county jails to lower the population in the state prisons. And of course, that screwed over the county jails.
Yes.
Because now you got a mixture of state prison inmates that you didn't have before that are sentenced, and they do their time in the county jail.
So prisons are more and well equipped than the jails because of the murderers, rapists.
They were designed to house people long term. The jails were never designed to house people beyond 1 year, which is the maximum for misdemeanor crime. So they were ill-suited to receive all these felony convicted felons from the state prison population.
So LA County is almost, the population of LA County is almost 10 million, right?
Yes.
That's the biggest county in the nation.
By far.
By far. The second one is, I want to say, in Illinois?
No, actually, the second county by population, I want to say, is going to be Harris County, Texas.
Oh,
I think
Texas.
they have 5 million. And New York City is weird because it has 5 different boroughs, and then the city of New York has 8 million residents. But the boroughs act like counties, so it's kind of split up in pieces. So it's very weird, this scenario. You go to Chicago as Cooks County, they have roughly 3 million. So it's a lot smaller population.
Do you think it's good to have such a big county? Or should it be smaller and divided into smaller pieces, just like New York?
You know what? It has its disadvantages when it's that big, because there's only 5 supervisors that run the entire county government. And that's a lot of power and authority invested in just 5 people with no oversight.
Tell me about the supervisors. Who are those people? They're appointed or they're elected?
No, they're elected, just like the sheriff, just like the district attorney. And they have a maximum of 3 terms that they can serve. Historically,
3 by 4 years.
3 by 4 years. Historically, the board was pretty cautious, and there was a balance between liberal and conservative voices. But after Mark Ridley Thomas went to the board in 2008, and then every board member that came in elected after him were far left liberals, and then the board lost that balance, and it became a very aggressive liberal voting bloc.
How come? If people elected those people, they were just propaganda machine, lots of money in advertising?
The Democratic Party in LA, it's a machine. They work with the Federation of Labor, the unions, and they have such a wealth of not only campaign contributions, big money, PACs, political action committees, and they knock on doors, they do ballot harvesting, you name it, they'll do it to keep their candidates in office. And it doesn't matter how bad the person performs, there's no relationship between their performance and getting reelected.
No meritocracy.
Huh?
No meritocracy.
Oh no, they do a horrible job. The Board of Supervisors is en route to probably bankrupting the County of LA with mismanagement, with fraud, waste, and abuse. And when I tried to actually run the Sheriff's Department, all they did was interfere. And because they viewed me as a threat.
Threat to what?
A threat to their authority.
So in order for me, I believe for most of the people, to understand why the US is where it is right now, with all the crime, everything, it's going mad, right? We have to understand the reasons why California is doing so bad. Let's take, for instance, statewise. So Gavin Newsom, 2nd term in a row. This is his last term, right?
He's done.
He's done in 2 years. Why do people still vote for him? After 4, he could be recalled in 2021, but they didn't succeed. Why? Because there were no candidates?
No.
Larry Elder was the candidate, but
there were candidates, but this is where the Democratic Party machine comes into play. Because remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger got elected?
Yes.
That was from the recall of Gray Davis. There was a lieutenant governor at the time, Cruz Bustamante, a Latino.
Yes.
He put his name on the recall, and he drew votes away he drew votes away from Gray Davis, from other Democratic candidates, and that allowed Schwarzenegger to receive the most votes in the recall. So on a recall, whoever is the top vote getter is elected. Doesn't matter if they don't get the 50% mark. The top vote getter wins the recall vote. As long as the recall is yes, the next question is, who do you want to replace him with?
Yes.
Whoever the top dog is in that wins the race. So Schwarzenegger won. The Democratic Party blamed Cruz Bustamante for allowing a Republican to win in a deep blue state. And basically the rule on the yard became, if you dare put your name in the hat on a recall against a Democratic incumbent, we will destroy you politically. And you've never heard of Cruz Bustamante again, have you?
So they did kind of...
So fast forward to now, with when the recall was qualified for Gavin Newsom, not a single Democratic politician put their name in the hat because they don't want to be like Cruz Bustamante. So who got the most votes? Larry Elder. But they didn't have enough votes to knock Newsom off. Had there been another Democratic candidate in the race, like a Cruz Bustamante, he probably would have won.
Okay, so that was 2021. 2022 election, once again. And he still gets elected for 4 more years. People like him. People like the policies of California. They think that California is not being destroyed in many ways. People are stupid.
Electing Newsom again after what he did in his first term in office is, how do you explain it?
Mind-blowing.
But then again, I ran against Janice Hahn on the Board of Supervisors. Look at the conditions of the 4th District on the county. She got voted in again too. People really do not connect bad politicians with bad outcomes. They don't.
So they could just vote blue no matter who?
Pretty much.
But you yourself consider yourself as a Democrat as well?
Yeah. But I wasn't the right Democrat because I didn't kiss the ring of the board. So I had to be removed at all cost.
That's what they did.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. They threw the book at me. Every single thing they could find that they could weaponize as a criticism against me. There's people think that I'm a tattooed gang member. That I'm the leader of a deputy gang.
Yeah.
They believe that, which is the most asinine thing. And I asked a simple question. If you think there's gang members on the department, who are they? You're hiding them. Okay? Hiding what? Every single deputy or employee who engaged in misconduct, we handled it. If it was worthy of terminating them, we terminated them. If they did crime, we referred them for prosecution. Every single one. It didn't matter to them. All they had to do was keep hurling the accusation. He's hiding, he's hiding. He has tattoos. He's the leader of the gang. Oh my God. Gangs are running sheriff stations. Of course, the captains of the sheriff stations that run them are like, news to us. I'm pretty sure I'm in charge. But it didn't matter because all that counted was repeating the false narrative, and they used their official position to repeat the false narrative. So with that image, hey, the supervisor is saying there's gangs on the department. The inspector general, oh, that's a very fancy name. They must know something. There's gangs on the sheriff's department. The oversight commission, oh, there's gangs on the sheriff's department. And I'm saying, where's the evidence? Oh, there's gangs on, where's the evidence? They could never answer the question because they didn't have evidence. But it didn't matter. That's the sad reality.
So when you were elected in 2018, when it all started?
Well, they say it was 50 years of deputy gangs on the department.
Yes.
But it became a crisis as soon as I walked in the door. And somehow I was responsible for it. I was 7 years old, 50, back when I came into office, 50 years back. And 55, yeah, do the math. And they didn't care about gangs when Jim McDonald was in office. Now that Luna's in office, all of a sudden there's no more special hearings on deputy gangs. They're not going to subpoena Luna. They're not going to subpoena McDonald.
Because you're not in the office. You were the problem. They got rid of you?
Yes, and they used the subpoenas. Everything was theater. designed to deceive a public that was unfortunately gullible enough to buy into the lie. And they never could produce any evidence. I say, hey, show me who they are. I'll be more than happy to terminate them. But I can't round up people because they got a tattoo and fire them. Oh my God, the lawsuits, you know, the payouts would be astronomical. But they didn't care. It was all about, oh, he's defying subpoenas. You know.
But was there a moment when you felt their love, quote unquote? Because you were a Democrat, right? You got elected.
The only time I felt the love was during the campaign in 18. And everything that I campaigned on when I took office, I actually did. I got the body-worn cameras. I got ICE out of the jails. I reformed the department's force policies. I brought down violence in the jails. I balanced the budget. I had the department more transparent, more inclusive. We did 104 town halls in the 4 years I was sheriff. 104, and that includes during the pandemic. So we reached out everywhere, totally transparent. It did not matter. Because as soon as they realized that I could not be negotiated or bargained with to look the other way, I had to be removed at all costs.
But what was have you ever had this situation where they had, you have to obey or we will do the nasty stuff to you? Was there a situation like that?
Oh no, they knew better than to even try that.
Oh really?
Everything they did it behind closed doors.
So they didn't even try to bribe you?
No, they knew better, because trying to bribe me would have been a crime itself and I would have made the arrest.
Yeah, but I mean, bribing, like, stick with the party, do this instead of that, and you'll be good.
They didn't even bother. You would think that they would have said, hey, you know what, why don't you tone down, why don't you work with them? No. My first month on the job, the board hired a law firm to sue me. My first month.
You had a tough
Ink
love.
wasn't even dry on the paper yet, and they were already suing me. They had no interest because they realized that I was someone you could not basically negotiate my principles.
Were you surprised that this happened in the first month?
Well, it kind of happened little by little, kind of like the frog in the pot. You don't know that the
water is boiling?
The water is boiling, but that's how it was. They kept doing one thing after another, and they kept weaponizing all the components of county government, county council, telling me, oh, you're just a department head. We're going to tell you how you're going to do this or do that. I said, no, that's my decision, not yours. You know, they try to represent my interests when we were defendants, because once you take over the job, you are defendant in a bunch of things that are ongoing. And they were trying to dictate how things were happening as if they were speaking for me. I said, no, 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 wait a minute. That's not what I want. You're not going to speak for me. And all of a sudden, that was like, oh my God, the brakes are on. Hey, wait a minute, this guy's not going with the program. And a lot of it had to do with management of the jails. The sheriff runs the jails. The board of supervisors does not run the jail. But they didn't care, because under McDonnell, they told McDonnell what to do. Under Luna, they're telling him what to do. And of course, the jails are falling apart.
So would you say there is a deep state in the US?
There's a bureaucratic state for sure. And, but it's mostly aligned with the party that's in charge. Like in California, it's one party all the time. So there's really not a deep state per se, because it's just the party who's in charge. They run everything. There is no checks and balances. There's no opposing point of views, because everything is progressive, far left liberal, not moderate, far left. The people in Sacramento govern from the far left. You know, people say you can campaign on one extreme or the other, but when you govern, you're supposed to govern from the middle.
Yes.
Not in California, not in LA, no. They govern, they believe they have a mandate to govern from the far left. Hence all the policies that you're saying, why is California falling apart? Criminal justice reform for them? Well, they decided the criminal justice system was racist. They just decided it's racist because more black men are disproportionately incarcerated. Well, I'm sorry to break the news to them, but FBI statistics alone nationally, they're involved in more crime. They're also victims more frequently of crime. But they don't care about that part. The victim part is never a concern to them. It's all about virtue signaling. We're going to free up the victims of mass incarceration. No, you're freeing up murderers, rapists, robbers.
Changing the terms, basically.
Yeah, they just manipulate the language to make them victims. And who are the bad guys? The cops. The cops are racist. The cops are, a thug with a badge. They're trigger happy. All these terminology, and we have to decarcerate the jails and the prisons for a true, safer, community.
I'm gonna tell you a crazy story. So you were a sheriff in 2020 when BLM started, right? Mm-hmm. We're gonna get to that story. So that was 2020 May. So I lived back then in Lithuania, in my home country. So the whole country is very small, 2.8 population million. It's one of the Baltic states. It's northeast of Europe, right? I want to say it's 10,000 miles from California. So when I grew up, I was watching always Hollywood movies, listening to the America's music and etc. So the culture influence from the U.S. to Lithuania was huge. Nevertheless, in 2020, the BLM started. The next day, there were riots. I want to say not protests, more like protests in Lithuania, in the capital of our country. So people were marching, protesting with the BLM, Black Lives Matter, and with sayings like "fuck the police." But Lithuanians have nothing to do with the Americans, with blacks, African Americans, etc. But they still did that. And I was amazed by how the propaganda works. They just see that on TV, and they do the same thing 10,000 miles away from that country.
It's well-funded propaganda.
Yeah.
Very well-funded, very well-organized.
So I was always wondering, I wanted to go to that protest and ask those I want to say just liberals, students that were having this "fuck the police." If I punch you in the face right now, who you gonna call? They're gonna call the police. The one that you want to fuck with? That's what you want to do? Mm-hmm. So every time I hear those statements like defund the police and etc., it's lunacy to me. Because the result of the defunding the police is California 2024, right?
Oh, yes.
Almost every day we can see on Instagram, on Twitter, videos of just people looting the shopping centers, looting 7-Elevens, shootings. Oakland, it's like from the movies. If I tell my fellow Lithuanians about the Oakland and that everything that is going on right there, they will never believe me. I would have to show them the footage. It's impossible to say that that's true. Or for instance, let's take Chicago, right? Every weekend, dozens of people get shot and a few of them are murdered. Every weekend, 2, 3, 4 years in a row. It's impossible just to fathom this.
Labor Day weekend alone, I think in Chicago, they said it was 106 shootings and 19 people killed.
How is it possible?
One weekend. But going back to 2020 and Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
A small station we have in South LA. It was a majority Latino community, but there's still a large group of black residents that lived there a long time. And they were protesting Black Lives Matter in front of South LA station. And they started doing acts of vandalism, and we ended up arresting about 50-odd people there. Of all the people arrested, only one person lived about 5 miles away. We arrested people from Texas, from New England, from Florida, from Washington, and they were all white. And they had Black Lives Matter signs in front of the station, and the black gangsters that lived in there, they were members of black gangs. One of them came and talked to me and said, you know what, we're tired of these people. We can't get to our own homes here. Our parents need to be able to go out and about. And, if you hear some shots fired, just take your time. I was like, hey, don't do anything dumb. But that night, this is September of 2020, they had the protests. And then we got a call from one of the protesters.
I got you.
Someone had flattened all their tires. So at least they took my advice that they didn't shoot anybody, but they flattened all their tires. And what did they do? They called 911. And who answered 911? The very station that they were protesting in front of. That's how dumb the protest was, because what happened to George Floyd was a tragedy, a manslaughter, a crime of indifference. The guy was probably on his way to dying because of an overdose of fentanyl. I think he had ingested a lethal amount, so he was doomed. He needed medical attention that he didn't get because of Derek Chauvin. So I got to fault him for that. And but that's 2,000 miles away from Los Angeles. It's just like it's 10,000 miles from Lithuania. It's 2,000 from LA. Has nothing to do with LA whatsoever. But here they were trying to burn down Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Long Beach, all these places because of the actions of Derek Chauvin.
Back in Minnesota, Minneapolis.
Yep.
Minneapolis, Chicago, LA, New York, right? Those cities were burned down. Minneapolis, big time.
Minneapolis, big time. Portland, Seattle, Austin, Texas, Rochester, I believe Minnesota. There were protests all over the country, but the ones that got violent were in those areas, in particular, and here in LA, the Fairfax district, where they did a lot of looting and we ended up arresting a lot of people. Santa Monica, they called us a little too late because they were too afraid to use force. So
Who are they?
Santa Monica police. The chief of police of Santa Monica, she was very, what they use the term, woke. And her city council was very progressive as well. And we don't want to offend anybody. It's just property damage. And they end up destroying half of the promenade. And we realized these people have no interest in actually stopping it. So we went there in good faith. I went there personally. After we got everything under control, we knew where everybody was. We ordered all the National Guard troops, did all that stuff that I was supposed to do as sheriff.
Yes.
So let me go out in the field with one of the mobile field forces. We'll go to Santa Monica. And we realized these people are wasting our time. They don't even know what they're doing. And we went to Long Beach, and same thing was happening in Long Beach because the Chief Loon at the time, he was hiding in a basement of a fire station.
Literally?
Yeah, literally, he was hiding there. So his own officers couldn't find him. I asked him, "Hey, where's your chief?" And one of the officers said, "Well, I got an email from him on his phone." I'm thinking, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" So we directed our deputies, start arresting looters, take people to jail, don't let this get out of control. And once the word got out that deputies were arresting people, then all the looters kind of...
But that was when? September?
This was May. No, this is end of May. But the protests were kind of sporadic throughout from May all the way through September.
But the worst were in May, right?
End of May were the worst.
Who did not stop them at the first place? When everything started, when they started looting and just burning the tires, burning the cars, shops, and etc. Whose responsibility was that to say, stop, we don't do that?
Fairfax was LAPD's responsibility. Beverly Hills called us very early, and we took care of business. And they did not burn down.
How many troops did you deploy?
We had to Beverly Hills probably about 100 plus. And their goal of the Antifa crowd that had hooked up with Black Lives Matter was to basically loot and torch Rodeo Drive.
Yes.
Because they're going for symbols of capitalism and wealth. Their rallying cry, well, let's not do like 1992 and target South LA, where we live. Let's burn the white man's wealthy neighborhoods. So they went to Rodeo Drive. They went to the Citadel. And we found them at the Citadel. We arrested a bunch of them. Nothing happened there. So where we took action and were proactive, nothing happened.
But you couldn't take action before you get asked to do this, right?
Well, at the very beginning, I was assuming that the chiefs of police would be proactive and take action immediately until we found out that wasn't the case. Once we realized that, these people are deer in the headlights, they're not taking action, screw it. So I told my deputies everywhere, wherever there's a riot, anything, go get them. Don't worry about local jurisdiction. Don't report to local chiefs of police. No, we're going to assume the entire county is our jurisdiction for purposes of quelling any riot. We're not going to let anything grow out of control. Once we did that, the whole thing was over.
Do you have an answer why the police departments did not take action at all?
They were afraid of their city council, their political leadership.
That they're going to defund those police departments?
Well, they were. The LAPD at the time got defunded 150 million under Eric Garcetti, the one they called Yoga Pants, and he caused them to lose 150 million. He took a knee in front of the protesters. The chief of police took a knee in front of the protesters. And I'm like, oh, hell no.
It's anarchy.
Exactly.
That's straight from the movies.
And so no one's going to have, I'm not taking a knee for anyone except for the man upstairs.
Amen.
And, but they asked me, hey, can you come help us at Fairfax? Because it grew out of control. There was more protesters than they could handle. And that was the first time LAPD ever asked us for help. And we were like, sure, no problem. So we sent a whole mobile field force there. They took care of business. They think they ended up arresting like 800 people, putting them on buses with the flex cuffs and all that. And that pretty much ended that. And there were protests later on during the week, but they were organized, they were peaceful. We, worked with LAPD and the CHP, made sure the traffic didn't, get in the way or harm the people marching. And that's fine. That's what the First Amendment is all about. But this whole thing is putting on, padded, armor and shields and face masks and all that stuff. That's like you're playing NFL football. That's not protesting. And those people, we targeted them because they were engaged in criminal activity. And that was the difference. As soon as we said, go get them, they went and got them.
So defunding the police department means what? 150 millions?
Well, that was LAPD.
LAPD. So that means a lot of stuff is going to lose their jobs, or you're not gonna get the equipment that you need, guns, vests.
For LAPD, that's what happened there. For our department, they did a lot worse because LAPD ultimately reversed course and kind of restored the funding. Our department, they took out 145 million one year, 116 million the next year. They removed 1,281 positions from my budget, and then they imposed a hiring freeze, which is the worst thing of all, because once you put the hiring freeze, people still retire, but we couldn't replace them. So our numbers just started shrinking very quickly.
So in order to become a police officer, a cop, you have to go to the police academy, right?
Yes.
For how many years do you have to study?
It's 22 months. 22 weeks, the academy.
Only?
Yes.
So after that, you're supposed to be hired. But
well, you're hired when you start the academy. So you're a temporary employee in the academy. Once you graduate from the academy, you become a probationary employee. So you have a 1-year probation period. And then during that time, you go to the jails, you're trained how to work the jails, and that's a 2-month training for the jails. So that's a substantial amount of training.
But why the jails? If they, for instance, want to patrol the...
Because the jails is the first responsibility of the sheriff. The second responsibility is patrol. So you got to make sure the jails are always staffed.
So if the hire is on freeze, they don't, new people don't go to police academy because they're not being hired in the first place.
They're not being hired, so which means everything, all the numbers start shrinking.
But now you have a problem in the police departments when people just don't want to go to be a law enforcement, right? Because of the...
Well, all the conflict, all the controversy, the profession itself was given a black eye by politicians. Because they knew what they were saying was false. They were trying to sell the idea that cops were a threat to young black men. And my position was, no, we're not an existential threat to young black men. Young black men, unfortunately, are an existential threat to other young black men. That's the ones who's killing them 99% of the time.
Statistics.
Yeah, that's a cold, hard fact, but that's information that the establishment didn't want to listen to. And my point is, let's teach these kids, one, to respect the rule of law, to not use violence to resolve conflict, keep their guns at home. Those 3 things, you'd save so many lives. But that was not, because that doesn't benefit. Black Lives Matter was about monetizing tragedies. When shootings occurred, deputy-involved shootings or officer-involved shootings, they're tragedies, no matter how you slice or dice it. Tragedy for the people that ended up dying. Tragedy for the officer that pulls the trigger.
Of course.
And those are traumatic events. There's no way around it. But they're very rare. And they were trying to sell the idea that that's common, and let's ignore what we can't monetize, because you can't monetize a young black kid killing another young black kid. But if the cop's involved, then we can make money off it.
So when I was living in Lithuania, I was always watching a few shows. I was watching Hollywood movies, all that stuff, and I always had this idea that in America, especially, you can't touch a cop, right? If you touch a police officer, you're gonna be in big trouble. But just this year alone, in New York, they were protesting and they were fighting with cops, and nothing happened. Mm-hmm. You can beat up a police officer and you're not gonna get charged? How is it possible?
Well, that's when you have the progressive DA movement, district attorneys, mm-hmm. and they started downplaying assaults against law enforcement. And it happens here in LA in the jails. Deputies get assaulted by inmates. They go to prosecute the case, and George Gascon won't prosecute the case.
Why?
Because he believes that deputies can't be victims. And yeah, they are victims, and the images are ugly. Same thing with probation department. They get assaulted all the time by the juvenile offenders that are in juvenile hall and can't get prosecutions out of it, which is incredibly stupid, because you made their job more difficult. You're emboldened their criminal element, realizing, oh man, I can do whatever I want. Mm-hmm. And that's a really, really bad idea. And it has consequences. And now out in the streets, they think, no one can touch me. There's less cops, there's more crooks who are emboldened, so you see the smash and grabs. You see all these outrageous crimes that people catch on video. Mm-hmm. But what you don't see is the thefts that happen every hour in supermarkets. Mm-hmm. In 7-Elevens, people just walk in and walk out with whatever they want. No respect for the rule of law. And that is the saddest tragedy, and it's hard to quantify it because people have given up reporting on it.
Who would you say is the boss of those DAs that do not want to prosecute the criminals?
George Soros.
Straight away.
Mm-hmm. He's the one that bankrolled the progressive DA movement, which has failed horrifically. And now you had Chesa Bowden in San Francisco. He's out. Pamela Price, I think, is the other one in Oakland, and she's on her way out, hopefully. You have Gascon in LA, hopefully on his way out in November. The DA movement has been, a progressive movement, has been an absolute failure. You look at the crime statistics alone, the zero bail or bail reform agenda, mm-hmm. another failure. You know, cite and release, book and release, magisterial review, all these different things all sounded fancy, but now they've had it for over a year. Show me the results. How many people went back to court after getting a ticket for having committed a felony? They won't show you. Okay, but they pat themselves on the back though. Oh, we're so reform-minded, but no. How did that make everyone safer? Did they show up in court? Were they held accountable? Or is just, let's forget about it?
So the United States of America, 250 years old as a country, right? Great country, once at least. Like 20 years ago was a great country. Almost more than 300 million population of the United States. Economy-wise, number one. Military-wise, number one, right? Superpower. Is being controlled by this Hungarian old man?
Well, the law enforcement side, when it comes to prosecutors, yeah, he is. He's the one that put him there. He spent millions and millions of dollars in free advertising for these people, and they benefit from it. That's how he got there. That's how George Gascon got there. He outspent Jackie Lacey by $5 million. It was all by checks written by George Soros, Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, mm-hmm. his wife, can't remember her name, but there's a handful of billionaires out of San Francisco. They write all these big checks, bankrolling this progressive movement, and then the local media doesn't report failure at all.
Because because the media is owned by Soros as well.
No, I'm sure he owns some of it, but not all of it.
Okay, his friends?
But his friends, yeah. But because you wonder, why would they not report facts? They don't. All these things that should be obvious. Where's the Public Records Act request from the Sheriff of LA? Hey, show me how your cite and release is working. Where is that? Where is the Public Records Act request about response times? Because in police departments, sheriffs, police, they always measured response time. Like how long did it take you to go to an emergency call, a priority call, a routine call, the 3 different categories. And they measure and they can compare. And that was always a synonymous to with how effective a law enforcement agency was, their response time. They don't discuss response times anymore.
Because they plummeted.
The numbers are going down, so you know the response times went up because there's less cops. So they just stopped talking about it. That's how they resolve everything. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's not talk about smash and grabs or retail theft.
So this is going on since when? Since 2008?
2014 is Prop 47.
Prop 47.
That laid the foundation. AB 109, prison realignment, and Prop 57, which reformed the way people are put on probation and parole. Those combination of those 3 was strike 1 and 2. Then came the progressive DAs that took office, and they decided, well, we're not going to prosecute misdemeanors, period, which is what Gascon has done. Well, you don't prosecute misdemeanors. Shoplifting is a misdemeanor. If you don't prosecute it, that means people realize I can take whatever I want. That's what's happening right now.
Well, aren't they trying to categorize pedophilia as a misdemeanor as well?
Well, Prop 47 changed a lot of felonies into misdemeanors. Drug possession, hard drugs, went from felonies to misdemeanors. Petty theft with a prior used to be a felony. They threw that one away. They redefined what constitutes burglary. Burglary used to be entering any building with the intent to commit theft. That was burglary. They got rid of that. So now people walk in with empty suitcases or big trash cans or barrels to fill it up. In the past, you could just arrest them on the spot for burglary just because it was the entering with the intent. It was easy to establish that intent. Prop 47 wiped all of that off the books.
So all those billionaires and millionaires that fund this progressive left, extreme left, they hate their country, they hate themselves. They think that they can live in a town, in a neighborhood that has 20 feet tall wall that will protect them from the looters.
They live behind that wall. They have the very manicured lawns. They're so far removed from the problem they create that for them it's all about virtue signaling. Look how wonderful I am. Look I'm going to save these people. You know, the white savior model, they think. Oh, I'm going to save these people. What they're doing is they're condemning the poor people to live in poverty because crime drives poverty.
But they will get after them as well. It's just a matter of time if that continues.
Oh yeah, because now the crooks, especially the ones that come from Chile, you know, the tourism burglary, they're finding their way into the Hollywood Hills, to the mansions, to all the wealthy places where doing residential burglaries pays off because there's a lot of stuff. Doesn't pay off in a poor neighborhood, but break into a home around here or in Beverly Hills, better payout.
Of course. Then they're gonna find out the San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley. Yeah. Those houses are very expensive. They have very expensive stuff right there.
Oh yeah, a lot more expensive than around here, that's for sure.
Do you think that's a coincidence that the same thing that is happening here in the U.S., in London, Paris, Berlin, Europe? Do you think that's a coincidence, or this is just planned?
I think the ideology is in a lot of places. I mean, they think that the criminal justice system is racist. So let's not arrest people because arresting someone is an act of racism. That's how they believe here, which is the dumbest thing ever heard.
They sold it to the public.
They sold it to a gullible public.
Electorate.
And they looked at numbers, and I'll give you a simple number to prove how dumb the idea is. In the county jail when I was in office, 31% of the murder suspects awaiting trial were male black. 31%. They're only 4% of the LA County population. So do you think they were targeted and they were framed, or someone's dead and they're probable cause to believe they did it?
It's so racist to tell this.
But if you just say that, oh my God, you're a racist. No, I'm just pointing out cold, hard facts. That's all it is. I got to deal with reality, not with people's perceptions, or if they're squeamish about reality because it paints them in a negative light. Well, because once they do that, they don't address the problem.
So Prop 47, 2014, it can be reversed this November, right? Prop 36?
Partially. Prop 36 is going to reverse it partially.
In what way?
Well, it gives them 3 strikes and you're out. Basically, you have to have a 3rd conviction before some things kick in. So it has some good elements. I think it would have been far easier just to repeal Prop 47 and revert back to the original codes.
Who can do that?
A vote of the people.
In Sacramento?
No, it has to be a statewide ballot measure.
So you can vote in just like you can vote in for communism, you can vote out? They voted in Prop 47, no chance of voting out of this stuff.
Well, you could repeal it, but it'd have to be by proposition on the ballot for the whole state to vote on. You can't repeal it by legislative act. Once a proposition is, I believe, you can only alter it with another proposition.
Legislative means you have to go to California Senate, pass the floors, and then?
And then in the state Senate, the Assembly, then the governor signs it.
What about the sheriff and his term limits? Because I've seen the history, right? It's crazy that there were people serving for 20 years. So, for instance, Sherman Black, 1982, 1998. The second one after him, 1998 to 2014, so 16 years. No term limits for being a sheriff?
No.
Do you think there should be?
You know what? Thinking long and hard, it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword. Because when you impose term limits, you cure one problem, but you create another set of problems.
Like what?
Here in LA County, for example, because the political machine is so active in terms of ballot harvesting and getting candidates in office, now they'll protect a bad sheriff. Like right now, Sheriff Luna, he's an absolute failure. He's failed at everything he's done. He's alienated his own workforce. He can't hire other people. But watch the same machine that got him in office try to protect him to keep him in office. See? So that's why I say it's a double-edged sword. And I did one term in office. I did everything that I campaigned I was going to do. Saved the county from burning down during the riots. Prevented the pandemic from overtaking our jail population, so we saved a lot of lives. Balanced the budget, did everything. And they wanted me out because I was somehow some evil person.
That was the problem.
Yeah.
You balanced the budget. That's bare minimum, what you didn't have to do. What about, let's talk, for instance, your reforms, right? So, body cameras. How do they work? So you've got this 35 million to buy the body cameras. What are the pros and cons of wearing a body cam?
Well, there's very few cons other than just the cumbersome element attached to it, you know, the technology. But the pros far outweigh them because, one, it's about transparency.
So once a police officer wears a body cam, it's non-stop, right? It's recording non-stop?
No, not non-stop. It records only when you activate it. So it still requires the user to hit the button to activate it. And then the important thing about that is because if you record for that long and you save it, the cost of all of that IT infrastructure to save that much footage is just astronomical. Because remember, you're going to have anywhere from 400 to 600 deputies a day, 3 shifts per 24/7, 3 shifts per day, recording 24/7. You can imagine, do the math on how much IT, the storage capacity alone would be horrific. So McDonald couldn't figure it out. And when we took over, I said, let's make it faster, better, and cheaper. Let's activate it and record only when we need to. Like if I do a traffic stop, pull somebody over, hit the thing. Go in pursuit, hit the thing. Get into a fight, hit the thing. You know, whatever, hit the button. And then I'm not going to record just driving around. So that way, instead of recording 8 hours of a shift, now I'm only recording maybe half an hour of a shift.
What about the other counties or other states? Did they implement the same thing?
Everyone's kind of gone by some variation of that theme. And so they have a buffer. So if you hit it, like our cameras, I think there's a 2-minute buffer. So it's constantly recording, but it's not saving what it's recording.
Once you hit it, it takes back 2 minutes.
It'll capture the 2 minutes, because at the 2-minute mark, it just starts writing over itself. But it'll capture the 2 minutes. It won't have audio, but it'll have the video. And then the audio will kick on as soon as you hit the button. And that drove the cost down massively. I think McDonald's program was like 200, I think it was like 55 million. He wanted 239 employees to run the whole thing. It's like god awful. We chopped it down to 35 million startup and just 16 million per year, and only I think a group of 25 employees to manage the data and the hardware and the software and all that.
Do you have some kind of a story that when body cams saved the police officers' lives?
Oh, we have a lot of stories.
Can you tell at least one?
Off the top of my head, one was a deputy involved shooting where happened in Cudahy. And this one, the department got sued, but the body-worn camera showed that it was a violent encounter with a guy they were trying to detain. And he ended up gouging out a deputy's eye. And he shot the guy, but they didn't face any charges or any prosecution because the nature of the tape that was recording, more audio than anything else, that showed it was a very violent encounter. And we've had successful prosecutions based on body-worn cameras as well.
I took the stats from Wikipedia. So this is murders in LA County. So the 1991, 1,025 murders. 1992, 1,000. 1993, 1,000. So up to, I want to say, 2010s, 600, 810,000. 2010, something changes, right? 290, 290, 300, 250, 250, 260. Then we go to your term, 2018, 258, 258, 2020, 355, 2021, 402, 2022, 382. Why? Why did they increase?
Why did they increase?
Yes.
Well, it coincides with George Gascon, the defund the police movement. We lost, when I was in office, we lost 25% of our homicide investigators. They retired, we couldn't replace them.
25% is, what is the number of that 25%? Is it hundreds? Dozens?
No, that's, of the whole division, detective division, I lost probably 200 or 300 detectives.
Only detectives?
Only detectives. But overall, I lost a lot more than that. I think I ended up losing about 1,200 total.
And once Luna got into the office, he got the funding back?
Oh, he got all the funding, but he couldn't hire anybody because no one trusts him. So where I was running classes of 85 deputies and graduating a class almost every month, I think he hired, in a whole year, I don't know if he hired 100 deputies.
People don't trust him, they don't want to work with him.
No.
But isn't it the reason just to ask for him to resign? People don't want to work with you.
Yeah, you would think they'd ask him to resign, but...
They asked you.
Oh, they asked me, and I was willing to work with everybody. But the people who did not want to work with me were the appointed and elected officials running the county. They're the ones that didn't work with me. The employees loved working with me. That's why we were able to hire so many. We hired 1,100 deputies in 1 year. We set a record. And every time we tested, the line of people waiting to test would wrap around the building. So we did not have a problem. Other agencies had trouble trying to recruit. We did not have that problem whatsoever.
The military has the same problem right now, right?
Lack of confidence in leadership. You got to have good leadership that cares about the welfare of your troops. That brings people in. But when they perceive that all you're going to do is throw your employees under the bus, your number one recruiter are your own employees. If your own employees can vouch for their jobs, yeah, come on, this is a great place, they're going to come. But if they say, no, you don't want to come here, you're not going to hire.
Do you have any explanation why Afghanistan withdrawal happened the way it happened?
Pure incompetence of the Biden administration. I know they were designated to withdraw. I think Trump administration had made the agreement. But the Biden administration, when faced with the task, instead of drawing down responsibly, they wanted to make a big show. And the big show they made was the wrong one.
That was a big show.
Yeah, a big show of incompetence. Because you remove your key personnel first that are in harm's way. They go first. No, they left them there. Your military equipment that could be reutilized by the Taliban, you take it with you. You don't leave it behind. If you leave things behind, you're supposed to blow it up, so it can't be used. They didn't do anything. They just left it there. So what does the Taliban do? They hold a parade with all the U.S. military equipment. That is incompetence. And then...
They actually did the parade.
Yeah, they did.
Actually.
You've seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just bizarre. And then you see people climbing onto jets and falling off the jet onto the runway, the last plane's out. Absolute disaster. And all of that was just incompetence. And because the Biden administration, I'm pretty sure, put a bunch of woke, progressive wonders in the military.
That nobody wants to work with them.
Yeah,
right.
But they knew better. They knew better. And of course they didn't.
Yeah, but that was 2021. Let's get back to 2012, Libya. The same thing?
Libya, was Gaddafi dead at that point, or was he still on the run?
When the embassy was overrun, the U.S. embassy overrun in, how is the city called? Benghazi?
Oh, Benghazi. That's more incompetence there. Yeah.
But if you care about your own people, your own citizen, right? You would never do that. Or even if you did that, you would beg for forgiveness. Like, we did a mistake. That was an error of ours. Please forgive us. People died. Your Americans died.
Again, it goes to incompetent leadership. If you understand what the threat is, don't put your people in harm's way. There's a time when you have to put people in harm's way. Classic example, D-Day, Normandy. Yeah, we got to go and knock Hitler out, so we're going to go in harm's way. And not a single person thought that was a bad thing. A lot of people lost their lives there. Tens of thousands of U.S. troops and Allied forces lost their lives on the beach of Omaha and in Normandy, but it was for a righteous cause. Benghazi was not a righteous cause. And the whole idea is once a situation goes sour, why you have an outpost in the middle of nowhere that you can't defend competently? It serves no purpose.
Speaking of World War II, right? So we had those two major wars in the 20th century. World War I, World War II. Do you think the World War III is already happening, but we think of it that it has to be a hot war, but it's just a proxy war, and we don't realize that it's happening right now?
It seems like it's a proxy war where they're already trading blows, and at some point it might resolve itself, and then years later historians will say, oh, that was World War III. But they'll do it from looking at the rearview mirror, not while it's currently going on. But if major conflict breaks out between the principals and not the proxies, then no one's going to question, yeah, that's World War III. That's what it would look like. But like in World War II and I, it was everybody against the Germans, or everybody against the Germans, Italians, and the Japanese. The axis of evil. And right now, we're not there, I don't think, but we're towing right up to the line where we could be there. All it takes is the Chinese or the Russians to jump in on what's happening in the Middle East on one side, and we're on the other side, and we jump in. Now they've sent ballistic shield personnel to Israel, U.S. soldiers.
So one of your reforms was removing immigration agents from Los Angeles County jails. What is that?
Well, this is something I've learned throughout the years, is that local law enforcement has a job to do. Immigration, ICE, they have a job to do, but they can't do their job together because one scares off the other. Like local law enforcement has to deal with, in LA County, there's 1 million residents that are undocumented, 1 million. We still want them to call 911. We still want them to report being victims of crime, to testifying as witnesses to crime, doing all these things. If people, those 1 million, view any encounter with law enforcement as a pathway towards deportation.
Because the police calls the ICE?
Yeah, they're not going to call.
Okay.
And who gets hurt the most is women. Sexual harassment in the workplace, domestic violence at home, everything that happens behind closed doors. Oh, you can't call because I'll call the ICE on you. And that is a worst case scenario.
Yes.
So that it's just a cold, hard decision based on what's best for public safety. Because the sheriff's role is to provide public safety for everyone. I don't pick and choose, well, I'm going to safeguard you because you're a U.S. citizen or legal, but you're illegal. I'm not going to, sheriff is not, that's not the role for the sheriff.
If you step foot on the U.S. soil, in the LA County soil, you protect them.
You got to protect everybody.
Okay.
And ICE needs a job. They have a job to do. They got to secure the border first. Hello. And they got to do their job. They just can't do it in connection with local law enforcement. State prison, when they're releasing a undocumented person who's a convicted murderer, rapist, yeah. But they're already 3 or 4 steps removed from local law enforcement at that point. That's the perfect place to deport the bad guy, but not local law enforcement. They still got to work with everybody.
So what exactly did you do?
We removed ICE from the jails, and we also stopped accepting money from ICE. ICE was paying our county jails to give all the data on the undocumented who were in the jail so they could facilitate deporting them. I called that blood money, and I called out the board of supervisors for doing that.
Why is it a blood money?
Because
you just mentioned a minute ago that if he convicted a crime, you call the ICE, he gets deported.
But no, that happens at the state prison level. At the county jail level, I don't have that. I have misdemeanors arrest. Okay. I have people in for drunk driving. If they get convicted of a violent felony, well, they go to state prison.
Then you're good.
Out of my hands anymore. If they get deported after that, they need to. I don't want them around my county. But the county was trying to pretend that, oh, we're the best friend of the undocumented. We're the immigrants, supporters, this and that. At the same time, they were selling the data of the undocumented to ICE for money. From 2003 to 2018, 15 years, they made $122 million selling our database to ICE.
Let me get this straight. So taxpayers' money are being withdrawn from one account to another. From ICE to you.
Yes, the federal government's ICE, taxpayer money from the feds, ICE, came to the county of LA, and these were called SCAP grants. State Criminal Alien Assistance Program or something like that. And this was astonishing because the board was swearing and they were out there virtue signaling, oh, we're the immigrant's best friend, look at us. While they were stabbing him in the back behind closed doors. I found out, I called them out, I said, we're not going to accept this money anymore, it's blood money. And the CEO at the time told me, well, you're going to have to replace it. I said, no, that's money you never should accept it in the first place. It's blood money. That's where I use that phrase, blood money. And they got all indignant, but it's the truth.
Did Luna revoke this?
Huh?
Did Luna revoke this once he took office?
I don't know. I suspect he did. And they're just going to bury the information.
So
I have no doubt.
So they let people in, then they... That's a twisted system.
Oh, very twisted. Because remember, these are the same people that were supported by Chirla, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights Los Angeles, by all these immigrant advocate groups, the ACLU. Oh yeah, the county, they're the best. The sheriff, he's the bad guy. But I was the one that actually drew the line in the sand, kicked ICE out, stopped the scam grant funding. Something that they were trying to do for years, in fact, not years, decades. I did it with one stroke of the pen.
But they always, so for those 4 years, and they still paint you as a bad guy. They paint you as a bad guy because they have the influence and they have the media, and you don't? You can't get on the media?
Oh, I get on it, but it's not very effective because their narrative, they're always going to tailor their message to the narrative. I give you a prime example. Last Friday, the Oversight Commission had a hearing, last Friday. And they said I created a secret police, that I was targeting my enemies. And
they're after you in 2024.
Oh my God, this is 24. I've been gone for 2 years now, and they're still after me. And we actually investigated allegations of crime. That's it. And we didn't care who it was. If there was an allegation of a crime, we investigated it. And that so upset the Oversight Commission because one of the commissioners was one of those ones who investigated, and a supervisor, Sheila Kuehl. This was an investigation about a fraudulent contract. And we had a lot of information about it. Other agencies didn't want to touch it because they were afraid of the board. Not because it wasn't a legitimate complaint. And we took it at face value, investigated it, and oh my God. Well, 2 years later, they're still trying to demonize me over it. So they interviewed the detectives on the stand on Friday, the Oversight Commission, and the Oversight Commission told them, or the deputy, one of the deputies told them, yeah, the Attorney General's office did not allow their investigators to see the evidence. Then the Attorney General says, there's no evidence to prosecute. Gosh darn, so sad. But their own investigators threw the Attorney General under the bus when he said they never looked at it. They were never allowed to look at the evidence. That is huge. And it was not reported by a single news outlet. Major piece of information like that is like,
nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. Move on, folks. But man, that former sheriff, he had a secret deputy, he had a secret police force. And they kept hammering this, oh, the secret police, alleged secret police. It was so secret, we put it on our website. We put it in writing to the board, hey, by the way, we created this unit to investigate public corruption. That's how secret it was.
That was the problem.
But you see how easy it is for the media to manipulate? And why is the media manipulating things at the behest of county government? Why?
So at this moment, 2024, you hopeful or hopeless? In your case, let's take your case.
Well,
what that they're doing with you?
Well, we know what they're doing. Their goal is to make sure I never run again for office. That's they're afraid of me.
Office, you mean any position or sheriff?
Well, sheriff is their worst nightmare, or board of supervisors, whatever the case may be. They're trying to paint as ugly picture as possible of me with every resource they have. It's all fake. They just don't care because they are that afraid of me being an elected official.
And people don't wonder why? So
people don't ask too many questions. They look at their phone and they do this. They read the headline and that's as far as they go.
But I believe that's part of the reason is because the system is so difficult to acknowledge, to understand. So on the ballot this November, you're going to have how many positions? Dozens.
Oh yeah, it's a big ballot.
How do they think they get to know all the candidates in their district for who to vote for? Proposition, vote yes or no. It's not only the president, right, and the VP. It's dozens of positions.
Oh yeah, the ballot's going to be thick to get through it.
So hopeful or hopeless?
I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful. There's the bad guys are going to get their day. Their time is running out.
You get elected in 2018. The first month you get this, I want to say, a stabbing, right, in the back. How did it affect you, your life, your wife, your sleep?
Well, it was stressful because we were doing the right thing all along. And I even explained to the board exactly why we made the decisions we made. They just didn't care. Because for them, they were going after the soundbite, the hashtag #MeToo. Oh, look at what he did. Knowing that I was actually correcting a wrong. They didn't care, but it was an eye-opener to show how evil these people are.
So prior to that, you knew that there was a corruption, but not that big?
Not to that scale. I knew some of them were questionable, but I didn't know that they would go to that length to try to get rid of me. I mean, basically lawfare, like what they're doing with Donald Trump, except I haven't broken any law of any kind, but it doesn't matter to them.
Did he?
See, this is the part that's hard to say because he's involved in so many things. I don't know what the real evidence is and what is just trumped up by his political opponents, because they've muddied the waters so much that I can't, give you an honest answer because I don't know what the evidence is.
So Trump said that once he got into the office in 2016, he didn't even realize how deep the deep state is and how corrupt the system is. So for you, it's the same thing, right? You knew that there was corruption, but the scale of the corruption, it just amazed you?
It amazed me because they were so devoted to getting rid of me. And like with the jail in the LA Times was like the scribe for the Board of Supervisors. Everything wanted, they'd run an article about it. We found that from 2013 to 2018, jail violence was growing exponentially. They had a 204% increase in inmates assaulting staff.
Staff, not each other.
No, staff. 204% increase. That's like, sound the alarm button, right? Never heard it until I came into office. 99% increase in deputies using force on inmates, obviously because they're getting assaulted. 31% increase in inmates assaulting each other. So all three categories, major increases from 2013 to 2018, which coincides when Jim McDonnell was sheriff. Where was the articles in the Times about this? No, they decided he was a reformer because he was part of the Citizens Commission on Jail Violence, and he replaced Lee Baca, who was a criminal, so it's all good, he's a reformer. I said, no, he's not. He screwed the whole thing up. Not only that, we were losing deputies left and right because he wanted to fire everybody and let the Civil Service Commission figure it out. That's not leadership.
Well, you can, in some way, you can call even Lenin or Mao or Stalin a reformer as well. They want to reform the country.
Oh yeah,
Not every reform is good.
Yeah, you're lucky if you live the reform, right? Live through it. Yeah, like with Mao. How many lose, like 26 million or something?
Oh no, more.
More?
Stalin killed 20 million of his own people. Mao, they say up to 50 million.
That's true.
His own people.
His own people. So McDonnell, he ended up authorizing 400 terminations in 4 years. 400.
What is that?
Terminations, the step of firing an employee. 400 times. I did 165 in 4 years. It's the same organization, the same policies, same people. So how did he do more than twice as many as I did? He fired people he knew could not be fired. But he figured that, well, the Civil Service Commission will give them their jobs back later on, and I can't be blamed. He literally said that, which is the worst thing you could do possible, because you're admitting that you're going to destroy someone's life so you can look better for the press. And then when they finally get the job back 3 years later, they're angry, bitter, divorced, maybe lost a house and all that stuff behind it. That is just horrible. Luna is doing that right now. The exact same thing.
How big of a push did you have when they told you that you have to enforce vaccinations?
Well, I told them I was not going to enforce vaccinations. Man, they lost their mind. They tried to go to court. They tried to make the case that, well, they have the authority to terminate my employees, and they don't. I have that authority. And they could not accept that. And ultimately, we didn't lose a single person. But it convinced enough deputies to say, you know what, screw this county. Let me start going to another county. And they did. We lost a number. It was noticeable that started to leave to Ventura County, to San Bernardino, to Riverside, Orange County, all the surrounding counties that didn't have vaccine mandates. Now there was, hey, come work with us. We won't fire you.
But you didn't fire them as well. Why did you leave them? Just
because
the news broke up and they...
Well, they were afraid of one of the threat, always being under the gun, and the lack of support from the Board of Supervisors. People just got tired of it.
Can you explain me this? So let's take Los Angeles, right? Big city, lots of problems, crime, etc. But that was for decades. Now you have the homelessness crisis. You take 20 miles from LA, you go to 20, 30 miles, you go to Orange County, no homelessness at all. So it means it can be solved. This problem can be solved, right? Why don't they? What are the benefits of having this so many homeless people in LA, for instance?
Well, we have what's known as the homeless industrial complex. That's a group of all the nonprofits that are making money off the homeless. They can't solve a problem that they lose money on. As long as they keep receiving money from the state and from the county and the city, the homeless are here to stay because it's their cash cow. We solved homeless. We cleaned up Venice Beach. We cleaned up in front of the VA Center in San Vicente. We cleaned up Olvera Street, Topanga Canyon, Larios Park, Parnell Park. I mean, we went all over the county. We got rid of the encampments, got people into housing, and no arrests, no force. Do you think the county, the city ever said, hey, how'd you do that? We'd like to try? Never. Never. It was all about, oh, there are houseless neighbors. You know, we need to support them because they can't afford housing. Yeah, you're smoking dope 24/7. You can afford rent if it was a nickel a month. It's as simple as that.
So you got to the streets, you did not arrest the homelessness, but you took off the campus, and you got them into a shelter?
Everything.
But they come back. Why? They got kicked off of the shelter?
They didn't come back to the places that we were working. The ones that go now into shelter come right back out because they get tired. They go back to the street and they just move around. Because the county and the city does not want to get rid of the problem. They're trapped in their ideology that it's an affordable housing crisis. And they're just going to keep throwing money at it.
Yeah, but for the homeless, it's better for them to be on the streets than in the shelter?
Some of them prefer the streets and the shelter, yeah.
So, to me, as a foreigner, can you explain to me Skid Row? How is it a problem for 50 years?
Skid Row going back to the 1930s.
30s,
No,
almost
90.
100 years. Why it's not being solved?
Skid Row started with the Great Depression. There were cheap hotels, flop houses in Skid Row where people came when they migrated west. You know, the Great Migration, Dust Bowl, people fleeing the Dust Bowl. And a lot of the able-bodied men who were alcoholics, they started settling around Skid Row. So you had hostels, you had whorehouses, you had all kinds of drama happening there that slowly grew, and it was contained. Oh, there's a coyote right there. Oh, wow.
My family is there.
Oh,
wow. Yeah, so going back to Skid Row, so they came back a lot of hostels, and but can it be solved, this problem?
well, see, With the growth of Skid Row, then it came the missions. And the missions are giving out free food and shelter. And what do people do? And then the drug dealers came in. And then people say, oh, wait, I can get a free meal in there. I go there. And so the drug dealers go there. And now I got people hooked on drugs, not just alcohol, but drugs. And then more do-gooders. Oh, we need to help these people. So the more resources you devote to solving it actually makes the problem bigger. I guarantee you, if you shut down Skid Row, not a single person is going to die of starvation. They're going to move to where they get the resource.
So it's basically a great example of socialism.
Pretty much.
You feed them, you give them shelter for free. They don't value this, and they live this way for decades and decades and decades.
And they'll keep coming. The more resources you offer, the more they come. It's kind of like a porch at night. When you turn on the light, all the bugs go toward it. As soon as you turn the light off, they all disappear.
Do you think California is about to change in a good way, or it's not the rock bottom and we will feel it?
I think we still need to hit rock bottom. We're not there yet. We're close to it. But look at the Olympics scheduled for 28, or the Super Bowl in what, 26?
26.
World Cup. World Cup 26. We're not ready for either. We're missing so many key personnel in law enforcement, both LAPD and the sheriff. Between the two of them, they're missing over 3,000 sworn personnel. 3,000. A lot of people. And they're not going to get them either, because they still have this war against law enforcement going on in their rhetoric.
Do you think they're going to clean up Los Angeles prior to World Cup, just like they did with San Francisco prior to Chinese leader coming in?
Xi Jinping?
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to try. The problem is a lot bigger than San Francisco.
So the last time you had the Olympics, that was 1994?
84.
84?
84.
84. So what do you think is going to happen? Just riots? Crime is going up during the World Cup?
Hard to say, really. Let's see with a new prosecutor, if we get one in November, Nathan Hochman, and they start prosecuting again. But there's so many crises going on at the same time that I don't see the current leadership able to handle these properly, because they're still married to an ideology that's an absolute failure, and they won't acknowledge it.
Don't you think that people are fed up with this?
You'd think, but then you look at the three supervisors that got reelected in 24 in the primary, all three. Look at Hilda Solis in 22, got reelected, and she's an absolute mind-boggling failure. There's no connection between what they do and their election. None whatsoever. It's alarming when you think about it.
Speaking of crime, is it true that there are certain areas in LA where even cops don't show up?
Not in my jurisdictions, no. We went everywhere.
But this is a myth, or that was a true story somewhere?
In some places in LAPD's area,
yeah,
it wasn't a myth. It was,
like, what areas are those?
Well, I remember back in the 90s when I worked patrol, LAPD wouldn't go to the Ramona Gardens projects north of the 10 freeway. But we go there all the time.
So it got better?
Well, we made our presence known, but we didn't, it's city territory, so we didn't enforce anything. But over the years, that place has gotten, I think, a little better. But South LA, there's supposedly places like that as well, that they don't show their face. But hard to say today, because there's so many things going on everywhere, and there's so few cops left on the street now, that even if they want to be in some places, particularly LAPD and the sheriff, those two in particular, they're missing so many personnel that there's places they don't even have the bodies to send to some of these places, because they're just not there. Look at when you got the street takeovers, you know, the sideshows spinning.
Yes.
Where are the cops?
That's a good question.
When you see people ramming a stolen vehicle into a store to break down the window to then pull out an ATM machine. Where are the cops? Didn't take them 10 seconds. It takes them a long time to do these things. No cop ever shows up.
So they're on the hold not to act, or they're just missing the personnel?
I think they're missing the personnel. Mm-hmm.
But it's like it's the same thing as you run the business, you've got the customers, and you just have to hire a few people for service, and you don't. No, I don't need those customers.
That's, well, Jim McDonnell, when he was sheriff, the board wanted to take over medical services for the inmates, and he just gave it to them. Oh, I don't need that headache. And they took over $800 million operation, which is medical care for the inmates. And now that medical care is horrible. The employees are complaining, can we go back to the sheriff's department? So they're paying a lot more for less care. But that's how the county does things.
Someone makes money of it.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you say runs Los Angeles right now? The gangs, cops, bureaucrats?
Oh, definitely bureaucrats.
So gangs are out, right? The gangs were the problem of the 90s in Los Angeles?
No, they're still there. They just morph over times. And they take on different aspects, but no, the gangs are still there. And you got new types of gangs.
MS-13?
Well, those are more recent, but now you have the ones that you got kids on bikes, taking over 7-Elevens and looting them, stuff like that. That's technically a gang as well.
So in your mind, what would you do? You arrest a 15-year-old that just looted 7-Eleven.
Mm-hmm.
What should people do this?
Well, again, this is where we need a probation department with a functioning juvenile hall that's fully staffed. We don't have that either. So many elements are missing from the criminal justice system as a direct result of the Board of Supervisors trying to just eliminate it. Remember, they froze hiring for probation department at the same time they did the hiring freeze for the sheriff's department. And now probation is a dumpster fire.
But that's definitely on purpose.
Oh,
they
yeah.
have a grand plan.
Their grand plan
is that plan for 100 years in the future.
Yeah, their grand plan is dismantle the criminal justice system as they know it, get rid of the sheriff's department, get rid of probation, bolster up nonprofits. They're going to offer services.
So they are going to enforce the law.
Oh, well, they believe that it's racist to enforce the law, that these people really, if they just had the proper services and they were treated, they wouldn't commit crime. That's the mentality of the board. They even call it care first, jail last is their agenda.
But the history shows us they're not effective. All the NGOs are not effective.
No.
Nonprofits are not effective.
They're right. All they'll say is, oh, we're doing proven strategies. There is no proven strategies.
Proven. Show the numbers.
Yeah, they won't.
Do you have any explanation why schools, let's take just LA County, why schools do not have police officers with guns protecting the kids? It's too expensive, as they say?
No, that's another progressive movement. We got to get the cops out of the schools. Ideology. They say the presence of cops is harmful for minority students.
How?
It's not. But they
Wait a minute, so you have police officers right now in school protecting the kids from shooters?
We do. Yes, we do in some, but not all. But the LA Unified School District, they got rid of a third of their police force, and they kicked them out of all the schools. Mm-hmm.
Because they're racist?
Yeah, that they have no business being in schools.
Even if the cops are black or Hispanics?
Oh, they don't care.
They don't care.
But the drivers of that were the parents of all the bullies. They're the ones out there marching. We don't want cops. The cops make our kids afraid. Not the school bully that beats up their kid every day, but the cop.
Out of 100% of school shootings that took place in the last 20 years, how many of them would be stopped by police officers?
Oh.
99%?
Well, but all the shootings stopped by either shooter shoots himself or law enforcement shoots him. And
how about a metal detector? Why not to implement this thing?
Some schools have them. But they tend to be cumbersome and leave the place looking like it's a lockdown jail facility instead of a school.
It would be at least safe. Kids are the most sacred things in the world.
There's a lot of different schools of thought on that, unfortunately.
What happened in 2022? I know that you can talk a lot about it, but what can you say? What really happened in 2022? Why you haven't been reelected?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason?
Well, the Board of Supervisors, the Democratic Party, the Federation of Labor, they all worked in basically in collusion in the Times to convince the public that I was the wrong guy for the job. Basically ignoring everything I did, every reform effort I did, pretending it never happened, and then pretending that fake things that didn't happen were real. Like the use of force in the San Fernando court lockup, where the deputy put his head on a guy's head, his knee on a guy's head. They billed it as, oh, it's a cover-up. The sheriff covered it up. Quite the opposite. When we found, we took care of it, and it should have been happened by captains, not by the sheriff level. So it was a very coordinated campaign. They started with the deputy gangs thing. Then you had the activists, Google LSD gangs, and they'd have that everywhere on social media. They kept hammering that. And, they were working in conjunction for sure. To spread a false narrative, and everything we did to reform the department, they just pretended it never happened. Like, we put together wage theft task force, a huge problem in LA County. Times wouldn't even touch it, wouldn't even acknowledge that we did it.
What is that?
Wage theft task force. Task force devoted to investigating and prosecuting cases where employers steal the wages of their employees.
Mm-hmm.
$26 million a week business in LA. It's huge. It's $1.5 billion a year.
26 million a week.
A week in LA County.
Alone.
And the Times wouldn't report it because it made me look good. That's how they played the game. When I kicked ICE out of the jails, progressive agenda, very high on the progressive agenda.
Mm-hmm.
On the normal
should have praised you.
Huh?
They should have praised you for that.
Yes, bronze statue and all that stuff. Never touched it. It never happened. That's how they played the game. They distort reality by concealing good information and by faking bad information, and then that's the only narrative that people listen to.
Okay, so let's have an assumption you take office in 2 years, once again. Or someone like you, with your values and principles, right? What are the chances they get to stay for more than 4 years?
Good question. Good question. It all depends on who sits on the Board of Supervisors. If we start getting honest people occupying those positions, the chances are better.
Once again, they are elected.
They're elected.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
DA is elected.
DA is
Board
elected
of Supervisors are elected. Sheriff's elected. And the major...
and the assessor.
And the major positions that are not elected are what?
Chief of police.
Chief of police.
Mm-hmm.
So it's people's will, basically. But they have to wake up.
Yes.
The last question on my podcast is always the same. Let's have two assumptions with you, Sheriff. Assumption number one is you become... the President of the United States is the most powerful human being on planet Earth. Just the position of the President of the US. Assumption number two is you become one. You become the President of the US and you have the Secret Service at your disposal. They love you, they respect you, and they tell you that they have all the answers in the world, right? You ask them, they give you an honest answer. What would be your first question?
Roswell, 1947.
Really? Let's say they tell you there were aliens. You as a president of the US, would you expose it to the public?
Yeah, I mean, if it's true and in the interest of transparency, why are we hiding? I mean, consider how big the universe is. It's kind of arrogant for us to assume that we're the only thing around. We're the only game in town. Just considering the sheer size of the universe.
You're a man of God. Mm-hmm. According to the Bible does not say whether there are aliens or not. It just says that the God created heavens and earth. So you think there are aliens? It's a possibility.
I'm just saying the possibility exists that we're not the only game.
Do you think people can handle the truth? Even how hard it would be?
I think people can handle the truth. The government, the people that supposedly think they're protecting, they do a little too much of that. People can handle the truth.
Do you think Epstein list will ever be public?
What?
Epstein list. Is it going to be public?
Oh, wait. Oh, the from that guy, Epstein?
Yeah.
I'd like it to be public. Just like I like the P. Diddy list to be public too.
Yeah.
Looks like they're similar in nature in a sense.
It feels like so. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine you being let's take a 30, 40-year-old woman that was watching this Hollywood actress or actor for decades, and she just adored him or her. They were her idols, and all out of a sudden she finds out that they're pedophiles, they're killers, or someone else. Don't you think that is going to cause a lot of chaos in the public?
Might cause some chaos for the individuals involved, but not in the public at large. No. I mean, look what happened with the guy in England who was a serial pedophile for years, and he was hiding right in front of the camera the whole time. Remember him?
Yes.
I can't remember his name, but they said he had over like 200 victims. And he hid behind children's charities to have access to children. But Britain didn't slide into the sea because that was revealed.
Alex, thank you for inviting us to your beautiful place. The coyote was wild. And God bless you.
I think you got him on camera when you walked by.
Oh, maybe. God bless you. God bless your whole family. And I wish you well in this case that you have. And I just hope that evil will not prevail with your help, with the people like you, and with the public and their free will, because they are free to choose. Either it's this November or in 2 years, the midterms, or another presidential election, doesn't matter. I just hope the evil will not prevail with the help of people just like you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Apollo.
God bless.
All right.